Hi, I'm Mr. Kangas, and today we're going to be taking a look at Chapter 13, Section 5, Linear and Non-Linear Functions. Linear functions we have plenty of experience with. They typically take the form, in equation form, they're y equals mx plus b. And as we know, with linear functions, they always create a straight line on a graph. Now, the thing about linear functions is x cannot be in the denominator of a fraction. It can be on top, but it can't be in the denominator. The letters, so the variables, no variable can have a power greater or smaller than 1. So you can't have a variable that is to the second, third, fourth, -1, -2 power. That does not mean it's not a function, it just means it's not a linear function. Non-linear functions tend to have variables that are squared, cubed, etc. So if you're looking to see if something's a linear function, x cannot be in the denominator of a fraction. Okay? And none of the variables can have an exponent. You shouldn't see an exponent on any of the variables. Because whenever you have an exponent of 1, we don't write it. So all of our variables should have no exponent. Okay? And the other thing about linear functions is they need to have two different variables in separate terms. So typically when you see a linear function written out, you'll see something like y equals 5x plus 4. So this would be an example of a linear function. You have two different variables. They're in separate terms. You may also see a linear function. Remember, linear functions are supposed to be written in y equals mx plus b form, but they don't need to be called a linear function. For example, you might have something like 6 equals 7x minus y. I can take this and I can manipulate this equation to become to be in y equals mx plus b form. That's okay. This is still a linear function. There are no exponents on my variables. I have two different variables. They are in separate terms, and I can write it in y equals mx plus b form, and x is not in the denominator of a fraction. So that's how you identify a linear function, something we have gone over before. Okay? And something you're going to be asked to do several times throughout this section. You're going to be asked to identify linear and nonlinear functions based on their equations, based on tables, and based on graphs. Just in this video, now that I've refreshed your memory on linear functions a little bit, hopefully, I would like to take a look at the graphs. Basically, anything that's not a straight line is a nonlinear function. So anything that is a curve or a wave, any graph that looks like any of those would be considered non-linear functions. So if you have a wave or a curve, it's non-linear. If you have a straight line, it's linear. In the next video, I'm going to talk more about how to identify functions using their equations, and I'm also going to talk about how to identify functions using tables.